Hi everyone, my name is Angela Lopez, like Tony mentioned. I am the clinical director of David Lawrence Centers for Behavioral Health. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist, and I've been invited today to talk to you all about spirituality, most importantly really the intersection of spirituality and emotional health. I want to first of all thank you so much for everything that you do. This is a very intimidating crowd of professionals with all your vast knowledge that you have here and everything that you do for the community. So thank you so much for that. I felt like this was, and Tony too, a very important topic. Today's presentation is not about religion. It's really about the cross between a person's spiritual nature, their spirituality, what that means, and how it really intersects and affects, sometimes positively and sometimes negatively, really, a person's emotional health. So if I were to ask right now, maybe for a definition of spirituality, I would probably get different types of definitions from everybody here. Maybe a couple people would maybe have similar definitions, and then some others would have some different ones. And if you think about it right now, just think in your head, how would I define spirituality? It would probably be very different among everybody, because that's what it is. Spirituality is different to everybody and different people. So I want to read a little bit about kind of what through research, what I felt was the best definition for spirituality. And so what I gathered is that it's generally about finding meaning, purpose, and connection in life beyond the physical and the material aspects of our life, right? So finding purpose, and connection. Those are three things right there in a person's life. And we know that through the various stages of life, all right, childhood, and then we get to adolescence, young adulthood, and middle adulthood, and we move on. All right, the spirituality and that connection to life and purpose becomes very, very important as we age and we get older and we experience life milestones. So spirituality is absolutely a part of everyone's everyday life. But how does it really affect a person's emotional health, right? Well, first we have to be able to determine, how do people express spirituality? So again, if I were to ask, knowing that what the definition is, right? Connection, finding meaning and purpose in one's own life. If I were to ask you, how do you express your spirituality? We would also get very different answers and responses from a variety of people. Some people will go with maybe a more religious type of connection, where they might say, spiritual readings, prayer, perhaps worship. Other people might say meditation, maybe yoga, being involved in nature. So we might get some different types of responses and how people express spirituality. So that tells us that spirituality really encompasses a really large and wide variety of different types of actions and abilities to connect with one's life, right? So what would be an example of spiritual connectedness? So if we think about, maybe in this room here, raise your hand if anybody's ever gotten the opportunity to be on top of a mountain, perhaps. And, yep, so quite a bit. Okay, we've got some travelers out here, because there's no mountains here in Florida. So you've been on top of a mountain, right? So those of you who didn't raise your hand, how about on top of a really tall building? All right, so you're on the top, right, and you look out and you see the view. And you're in awe of the view. If you've ever been up high and you've been in awe, could be even a helicopter, right? Airplane ride, and you've just looked out and you've been in awe of the view, and it's made you kind of reflect and think. That's spirituality. So there is some kind of spiritual connectedness that's happening in that moment. If you've ever marveled at some type of ancient architecture, right? That's also some type of spiritual connectedness that you've encountered. People who maybe experience a special bond and connectedness in a type of gatherings. Maybe it could be AA, or it could be some other type of fellowship gathering with like-minded individuals, and they felt really bonded to that group. That's also a type of spiritual connection that that person perhaps is experiencing or has made. So when we look at all these types and examples, right, this is an example of being spiritually connected, we also want to look at what is then the connection between spirituality and our emotional health. Why is it important? Why does this happen? So what we know about mental health or our emotional health, what we know about it is that when we as human beings, part of the human experience is to unfortunately come across situations in life that could be tragic, right? It could be tragic in many different ways. It could be some type of trauma that we experience, and the trauma can be different for everybody, but it could be perhaps a loss, right? It could be some type of threat to our life at some point. It could be perhaps a medical diagnosis for ourselves, or maybe we're experiencing that with our family members. It could be the loss of a patient. It could be a time where you felt maybe, repeated times where you felt maybe you didn't do enough and something tragic happened, all right? And so these experiences that could potentially be traumatic for an individual become part of the human experience. And with some individuals, there's a little bit more, an increase in possibility that those experiences happen depending on the work that we do, right? Either vicariously experiencing this through other people or firsthand experiencing these traumatic events firsthand, ourselves. So if we, think of that these are experiences, tragedy and all these negative situations that we can encounter are part of the human experience. We understand then that when we've studied, mental health and how things affect us, that spirituality, the dimensions of a person's spirituality looms the largest during these times where there's a crisis, during these times where a person's experiencing or on the edge of experiencing some kind of traumatic symptom. So, and because we can't avoid these situations a lot of the times, and they're part of the human experience, it affects us emotionally, and because spirituality looms the largest during these tragic times, spirituality and what we think of it and how we find meaning about our life, why we are here, the purpose, how we can contribute to society, all of that starts to fill our minds sometimes, particularly during moments of tragedy or during moments of crisis. Again, whether it's our crisis or whether we're experiencing crisis vicariously through another person, which happens a lot as well. So as a result of this, some individuals will experience an increased appreciation of life as a result of a tragic situation. We probably all know people that have experienced some type of traumatic situation. I don't even need to ask to raise your hand if you know somebody. We can say that most of us, if not all of us, know somebody. And some of us have experienced traumatic situations ourselves. And so when we're looking and we're thinking of that, how common these tragic experiences are, and if we know that during tragedy and during crises, there's some type of spiritual encounter and need that happens and occurs with some of us, it's a really great thing to always be considering what this intersection, what this means, what this intersection is between spirituality and our emotional health. So let's take a look at maybe some of the positive and beneficial aspects of spirituality, particularly because it looms the largest and we experience the most spiritual questioning when we're experiencing tragedies, and it's part of life, and especially with first responders, it's definitely something that occurs in a workplace, and that's just a workplace, and we're not even talking about a person's personal life. So if we look at that, let's think about what are some positive aspects of a person increasing spiritual awareness and how that can positively impact their emotional health. So through research, there is certain types of huge protective factors, okay? And we as psychotherapists, mental health professionals, there's a variety of different types of disciplines. There's psychologists, mental health counselors, marriage and family therapists, licensed clinical social workers, all kinds of psychiatrists, all kinds of variety of different mental health professionals. We are all trained that spirituality is a protective factor in an individual. Okay, all of us, we get the same. That's one of the consistent trainings that we all get, regardless of what mental health or behavioral health discipline or degree that you get. It's that spirituality, a person's spirituality and their spiritual connectedness is a protective factor. What that means is that it helps decrease, and it's connected. Well, let me not confuse, but it decreases a person's perhaps a desire and ability to act out on any need to take their own life. It is a protective factor in a way that it helps increase any thoughts and feelings of joy, any feelings of belongingness, and we're aware as mental health professionals that with the most common diagnoses such as depression and anxiety and trauma, which is part of the umbrella of anxiety as well, with those types of mental health and emotional health symptoms that we experience, when we're looking at a person's spirituality and how connected they are, meaning to purpose in life, connected to other individuals, other human beings, and the social connectedness, feeling a purpose, right? Those individuals are less likely to complete suicide. And there's studies and statistics out there that show the same, and that's across various cultures as well, which is interesting. So that's why we teach and train that when we're providing even like a clinical assessment and trying to determine whether somebody needs perhaps some emotional support or is struggling in a crisis or what they need, one of the questions we ask consistently is, do they feel that they're spiritually connected to anything? Describe your spirituality for me. And we get all different kinds of responses, but it's a protective factor. When somebody is considering and thinking of suicide, we know that spirituality for those individuals is absolutely something that delays, if not sometimes even prevents somebody from acting on their plan for suicide, among some other self-injurious types of behaviors possibly as well. So if we're looking at a person's spirituality, right, and how that could be a benefit, and their connectedness, how that could be a benefit. So we want to look at how spirituality increases, all right, those feel-good hormones in the body that naturally, those chemicals that naturally occur. And so one of those could be social connectedness. Spirituality for some individuals, depending on how they decide to display and act on their spirituality, can also end up improving the social connectedness for that person, which means that that person feels less isolated. They feel more connected to another individual who possibly is either going through the same thing or who they can help because that other person has gone through something they've gone through, right? They don't feel alone because they're more socially connected. And that social connectedness for some people when they practice spiritual, we'll call it practicing spirituality or being spiritually aware, right? Could be, going to a support group. It could be attending a church service. It could be getting together with like-minded individuals with one purpose. Different ways to spiritually or to have this connectedness with other individuals. One of the most common complaints that or that I hear about individuals who are experiencing emotional crisis is that they often feel alone. And maybe that's familiar to some of you and you've heard that or perhaps experienced it yourself or know individuals, but isolation is huge when it comes to exacerbating symptoms of potential depression and anxiety as well, contributing to that. So spirituality can help with that. If one person feels like, yes, I feel spiritually connected, all right, when I am among a group of like-minded individuals for this one purpose, and we meet and we gather, and I feel this fellowship, then that isolation decreases. That feeling of isolation decreases, the hope increases, and that in itself is a protective factor against feeling depressed, feeling exceptionally anxious. So another way that spirituality has been, for some individuals, has been known to be a protective factor and improve one's emotional health is when a person experiences guilt and shame. So sometimes when, and I can speak for myself in terms of the type of work that I do, when you work with patients and when you work with individuals that you're trying to help, sometimes guilt plays a part in that. Sometimes you feel like you didn't do enough, or you could have done something to make the situation better, or why did you decide on this and not that? And so guilt plays a part and starts to creep up, and then comes shame. And with guilt and shame, those are considered risk factors for an individual. Risk factors in developing emotional crises. So spirituality has statistically been known to someone who's spiritually connected to do better with combating feelings of guilt and shame. There's lots of studies on why that is, and it really depends on how the person spiritually connects. Sometimes it could be through self-help, meditation, books, journaling, and those are ways that that individual might be able to help process their own feelings of guilt and shame. It could be talking to within a support group or talking to others, and they feel spiritually connected that way, and that helps them, again, to not feel alone and process any feelings of guilt and shame. It could be connecting with nature, right? And you're out there and you're connected with nature and you're in awe and you're marveling about what the beauty of what you see, and you start putting things perhaps into perspective. So there's so many different dimensions and ways that a person's spirituality starts to have a positive impact in someone's emotional health. And the thing is that we don't often know it until someone points it out to us later on, or until we start to really assess, right, why maybe something is working or why things are better. And we start to look and see what are the things that we're doing, and perhaps we're able to at that point come up with, there are some things that we're doing that maybe we're not calling it spirituality, but it's really helping us connect spiritually with purpose and meaning in our life. So sometimes with trauma, with the line of work that we do, with just everyday life challenges and tragedies, we experience anger and irritability. Sometimes we, just because of the stress of the work, the stress of just being a human in life, being a parent, maybe dealing with family issues, dealing with our own maybe medical stuff that's going on, maybe we're balancing work and school and new life transition and change. All those stressors can slowly start to impact a person where they might start to see some irritability and then perhaps some anger creep up. And studies also show that a person who is more spiritually connected and feels and has identified that they have found a purpose and meaning in their life are less likely to demonstrate anger and irritability that becomes problematic to themselves and to those around them. These things are huge when it comes to just one thing, which is spirituality. Spirituality has so many different benefits that have been studied in an individual that it's pretty incredible and amazing how one thing that is inconsistent in terms of how it's defined by everybody can have such of the same benefit to people experiencing many different emotional types of problematic situations in their life. So anger and irritability we talked about, right? Isolation and loneliness, guilt and shame. So these are all really experiences of the, of the humankind, right? Things that we all experience, sometimes once in a while, sometimes more chronically in a person's life. Another part of our experience, I guess that we could say, has also been found to be positive through the aspect of connecting spiritually, has been to help with any feelings of hypervigilance, of nervousness, of fear. So if you're an individual or you know an individual that maybe experiences those feelings more on a chronic and persistent basis, fear, nervousness, something horrible is going to happen, you know that it's not pleasant. It's exhausting to feel that way, and it's exhausting to feel that way on a reoccurring basis as well. And studies have also shown that spirituality helps in that area. It helps in ways that sometimes the way that we connect spiritually, whether it be volunteering at a place or whether it be maybe actual spiritual readings. For some people, it could be just cracking open a Bible. For others, it could be reading a very enlightening book or self-help book, or writing down their thoughts, right? So all of these things that a person is doing helps with a lot of these different emotions. Speaking with a professional could be spiritual for a person, because there could be things that someone says that it's like, aha, it's so different how it affects somebody differently. And for one person, it could be like speaking to a professional is absolutely not spiritual. It's actually sometimes it creates, maybe distress. And someone else says, no, you know what? Speaking to a professional, whether it be, a doctor, or whether it be a support group facilitator or a peer that has some life experience, or whether it be clergy or, whatever it is that you define that. For some people, it's like, I get aha moments when I talk to other people about what's going on in my life, and I become spiritually aware. I become more connected to what my purpose is. I become more connected to what's going on. I become more insightful about myself, and therefore start discovering things about myself, which makes me more spiritually aware. So some spiritual, books or readings, or I guess you could say, nowadays audiobooks and things like that as well, also talk about forgiveness. There's lots of topics out there about forgiveness, and that helps a person also connect spiritually, helps them develop, whether it be forgiveness for themselves or forgiveness for others, which then helps decrease sometimes, in some individuals, irritability, helps decrease sometimes guilt. So there's just so many layers and layers of how spirituality can be beneficial and can be helpful. I wanted to just share a few things that I wrote down. I had asked several people, how do they practice spirituality, right? And I wrote down, some people had duplicate, the same answers, but I wrote down some of the different things that was said. And I wanted to share with you some of the responses on how other people practice spirituality. Now, with some people, we did have to kind of describe and explain what spirituality was, because some instinctually was like, oh, I don't go to church. And so we explained and educated what spirituality really is and could mean to a variety of different people. And so here's what, some of the ways that we then determined and was shared on what spirituality, how they practice spirituality. So one person said, mindfulness, and these are quotes, mindfulness practices, such as meditation, prayer. Another person says, self-reflection. I have to have my time every day, whether it be 15 or 30 minutes, to just self-reflect. I do that walking my dog. That's the time where I feel spiritually connected. Yoga, another person says. Someone else says reading rituals, connecting with holy texts. Someone else says self-actualization books, literature. Someone else mentioned spending time with art, music, other forms of media. And it's interesting because if you think about it, media can actually do the opposite sometimes, right? So we have to be wise and insightful in terms of what we're using as our spirituality and how we're feeling about it. So if we're feeling anxious and uncomfortable and we're feeling a sense of adrenaline, which for some people adrenaline's good, right? But that's actually not considered spirituality, okay? So for spirituality, it's more of a sense of relaxation, a sense of having a little bit more control, a sense of peace is what you're experiencing. And so you have to be mindful, right, enough that, hey, when I'm, maybe working on this clay or this pottery, I'm feeling relaxed versus someone else is like, no, this completely makes me anxious. I'm no good at this. I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't like my dirty hands. It's just, So for one person, it could be that spiritual connectedness, whatever task it is that they're doing to connect spiritually, or that brings them that peace and that purpose and that enjoyment, could be something that's very different to another person and do the opposite for another person. So some other individuals put time in nature, hiking, backpacking, kayaking. Someone else said religious services, worship. Someone else put painting, welding. Someone else said welding. And journaling or recording my thoughts. So such a wide variety of different things that spiritually connect, or that a person feels at peace, spiritually connected with a purpose, with meaning, joy, that brings them joy. And it's so wide and it's so different for everybody. And although there's so many different options, the majority of us haven't even tried 10% of those things. But yet the majority of us have experienced emotional crisis, are experiencing symptoms of either, sadness or anxious thoughts. But most of us have not practiced even 10% of those things. So it tells us sometimes that we need to be a little bit more aware of what helps us. We need to be aware of what spirituality really means, how it could be a benefit to us. And for some of us, really start thinking of what provides me, what helps me to find joy in life, connect with others, to feel relaxed, all right, that is something healthy, okay, that doesn't contribute to problems, but that helps me find meaning and purpose in my life. I want to mention that there's one thing that we always tend to prescribe to individuals who are experiencing symptoms of depression. And we always tend to, and this is at any age, but then regardless of what the symptoms are, for the most part, we tend to prescribe this also for individuals that are our aging population as well. And that is volunteering. It is one consistent actual spiritual practices, and we call this a spiritual practice, believe it or not, that a person feels and that we, from our experience and speaking to them, that we can attest that has been something that increases their sense of purpose, provides them joy and hope quicker than anything else, is the volunteering. So when somebody comes in and is experiencing moments of sadness and it's not going away, we know we can really be pretty certain that if we get this individual to spend some time out in the community volunteering on things that they enjoy, of course, right? That it absolutely, when they come into the office within a couple weeks, they can already say that things are better just from that act of volunteering, because it provides that spiritual connectedness of, I have a purpose, I am doing something good, I am contributing, I'm needed, and I'm seeing the benefits from what I'm doing. So it's amazing how that one, out of all the things that could be, spiritual, could allow someone to be spiritually connected, that's the one consistent one that people are like, yes, always it creates a benefit. And yet not one person, when I ask these questions about what kind of spiritual practices do you do, not one of them mentioned volunteering. So that was, I found that interesting. So I want to leave you with some facts. All right, so here are some facts that I want to leave you with regarding spirituality and the intersection between that and emotional health. So we have heard, spirituality can have a positive impact on someone's emotional health, right? So here's a fact. Those who say they have a spiritual life are 82% less likely to commit suicide. That's huge. That's a lot. It's pretty big. Those in a spiritual community may likely have more support systems, and therefore those support systems together with that person has been known to combat true mental health diagnoses and improve those symptoms that even medication has struggled with improving. Just through a network, a support network, spiritual connectedness through a support network. Recalling, here's an interesting one. Recalling a powerful spiritual memory. So in order to recall a powerful spiritual memory, you have to do it, right? So that means you had to have had some kind of spiritual practice. So recalling a powerful spiritual memory triggers that same reaction in the brain as receiving a hug from a family member, or that connection with a baby connecting with their mom, that physical touch. That we know that oxytocin gets released in the brain, and recalling. So in other words, recalling a spiritual connection has been shown to release those chemicals, or that one particular chemical at least. And let me give you one more. Spirituality can be a source of resilience against depression. So resilience meaning I'm battling symptoms of depression, I'm battling some sadness, okay? It's not going away, it's here, but it provides resilience, meaning that I've got hope and I can get through this. Okay? It then therefore does not impact the person in the same level of intensity as someone else with zero spiritual connectedness. The number one risk factor for a person that's really struggling to even to the point of contemplating ending their life is a lack of hope. And we know very well with all the research that's out there that a person being spiritually connected absolutely helps provide them hope. And so that is another reason why being connected and having the spiritual connectedness and being aware of our own emotional health and how it can help us could be a protective factor for us in terms of being either resilient with whatever we're struggling with now, or even help us to not even get to that point in some circumstances and situations. So I want to just leave maybe a minute or so, a couple minutes. I'm not sure how much time I have left, but thank you. But on maybe some questions. So if anybody has any questions about the intersection about spirituality and emotional health that maybe I didn't touch or cover, or maybe something I didn't make sense in something, if you could raise your hand or let me know, I'd be happy to answer that. And if I don't have the answer, I will get your name and find the answer for you. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask about this particular topic? Perfect. That's great. That's awesome. Made it easy for me. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Not sure what your day looks like, but I hope it's smooth.
Thank you.
Thank you to you guys.